Would you like the opportunity to optimize your taxes for this as well?
I would love that. Is that an option? Can I put my hand up? 2 points?
No.
No.
This is again still not enough.
What? I'm having panics in Mexican. What's up, guys? It is Vanessa back with another financial wellness video. Today I am joined by my wonderful friend Martina. Martina, where are you originally from and what do you do?
Well, I was born and raised in Uruguay. I've been living in Germany for 6.5 years, went to German school, and I chose to become a financial advisor to help other expats like myself. I'm one of the co-founders of Expats, as you can see here. Bing! And I am excited to be here with you today to walk you through financial planning and different scenarios of how to empower expats to make choices, even when there are many different uncertainties in their lives or questions regarding where am I going to be and what does that look like.
Exactly, a huge question that I wish we would have had those answers when we first moved abroad. We're really building stuff that we wish we would have had when we first started. So we hope you enjoy this series. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video so you get notified when I post more financial fluency content. As a reminder and a obligatory disclaimer, this is educational only. We are not giving you financial advice for your specific circumstances. So if you hear of anything that you might resonate with or something that might be a little bit similar to your situation, you need to remember that these are changing goals, changing circumstances. So please consult a professional before making any significant financial investments. And with that, let's get started. Martina, what do we have behind here?
This is an excerpt of what we saw in the last video regarding financial planning. This is one part of the cash flow where we're going to take a look into what happens with people's money, what situation are they at, expat specific, and taking a look into how do we distribute money according to different life stages and needs for geographical flexibility so that all the risks are covered and wealth management is well underway and suitable to every individual situation.
And I hope you see a little bit of yourself in ourselves because we are both independent ladies living abroad, supporting ourselves financially, and we want to make sure that you understand it is totally possible for you to do the same. So let's dig into what some of the common concerns that arise with our clients when we think about cash flow, what to expect. And if any of this is seeming too unfamiliar or confusing, be sure to go back to our first video, which I will link up here, and get familiar with these terms, some of the themes that are coming out, and then jump back into this video. Okay, so we're gonna start with a case study based off of a fictional person that I've made up in my mind right now. We're gonna call her Luz because I am Mexican-American and I support Luz as another fictional Mexican-American living in Germany.
So I'm gonna do it as if you were Luz.
Okay, great, I'm Luz today.
So Luz, could you tell me a little bit? I'm gonna run a couple of questions with you so that I can assess your current situation.
All right.
What is your current situation? What are you seeking to get out of financial planning?
Okay, I am 33-ish. I am gainfully employed. I want to start thinking about having a family, a small family, because I come from a very large Mexican family. But I'm not married and I would like to buy a house regardless of having a partner to help me do that. So I'm very interested in exploring what my circumstances need to be to afford a house here in Germany.
Just a follow-up question, what is small?
Small is like me, a cat, and maybe one kid.
Okay, perfect, very relevant. It's gonna play a role into this as well. Ideally, do you have a timeline for those goals?
Yes, I'm a control freak, so I would ideally like to buy a house in 2 years and then start a family within the next 5 years.
Okay, there's a lot of clarity on the goals there, but it's a starting point for financial planning, so that's fantastic. Having a little bit of
Confused about what to do with your money abroad? Well, I can help with that. My financial fluency course will give you the perfect overview of how taxes work, budgeting methods, investing options, and so much more. Check the description for details.
Just a little bit of clarity is already going a long way, and that amount of clarity gives us clear goals. So regarding citizenship and residence permit, what does it look like for you at the moment as Mexican American?
So I have a American passport, not a Mexican passport. I've been here for 5 years, so I qualify for permanent residency, and hopefully, based off of the new projections, I might be able to get a German passport and keep my American passport.
Okay, outstanding. And that is going to be really helpful for the bank loan conditions. Normal loan conditions and bank applications are not the same for most banks, at least Germany-wide, for expats as they are for born and raised Germans.
To be clear, they double your interest rate. So
not sometimes, yes, not always, but really, like, they change the conditions of the loan. They want more safety. There's always like a tiny residual risk that, I don't know, people leave the country or get deported and they don't get their money. So it's really important to take this into consideration. So this is already one step in that, and also the fact that you have the American citizenship, this also changes a little bit what type of assets can you actually invest on.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. So the American government does not like when Americans abroad open companies, invest in foreign trusts. So there's some additional planning and advisory that needs to come into this that I am not qualified to talk about. So that's why we have her here.
So working with Americans is brilliantly challenging, but also incredibly exciting, because it's a very creative way of wealth building a journey, however possible. So it's something that we can help with. And based on the current life situation that your life stage and family situation you described, and do you see yourself, you mentioned, okay, staying in Germany in the long run, does that also mean you envision retirement here?
I do envision retirement here for the purposes of this case study. In reality, I'm probably gonna leave, but let's stick to that for this situation.
Can you give me a picture? What is retirement for you? What does that look like?
I am very comfortable with my normal 9 to 5. I want to retire on time because I do want to enjoy my life and not have to be so concerned with like work and making like additional streams of income if I can help it.
One more question before I start filling all this out. I just want to make sure that I have all the basics laid out. So, any open liabilities?
I have student loan debt. Let's say something like some change, $20,000 of student loan debt. Just a little change, yeah.
Interest mark?
5%. Because it's a federal loan.
Okay, well, fantastic. They're prolonging those, aren't they?
They really are. Real Vanessa has $59,000 of student loan debt. But that's not what we're doing right now.
That is definitely an issue. There's nothing wrong with having open liabilities. That does not necessarily mean something bad or crippling. If you're borrowing money, for example, to support your asset building and doing it in a supported way, for example, that can be a thing. It's not an issue whatsoever if you have open liabilities for your financial planning. It's just important to know.
Yeah.
So we can plan accordingly.
Exactly.
Emergency fund?
I have an emergency fund. Just to be clear, this is the individual gold liquidity saving and short-term box.
Yep.
And with the years, short-term is 0 to 5 years. Great. And yes, I have an emergency fund.
You do?
Yes.
Okay, what does it look like?
I have 3 months of expenses, so rent, basic bills, and food that I could live on if I'm laid off or become in trouble in some capacity.
Fantastic. And beyond that, is there any other money lying in the bank account?
Yes, I have a flexible fund that I pull for daily expenses, and I try to have like a little bit of a cushion in case I want to travel or buy something a little more expensive than my budget initially projected.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's absolutely recommendable. Any purchase and big changes, goals into the 0 to 5, like Christmas presents, traveling, and so on. Any ongoing assets? Have you invested already into something, or is this just the beginning of your journey? What does that look like?
I have no privately owned brokerages, but I do have an employer-funded pension that I opened and forgot about 5 years ago when I first moved to Germany. So I know there's money in there. I know someone's taking care of it. I just don't know how much there is or what I'm supposed to do with it.
Company pension is a fascinating topic and a very relevant one. Lots of laws have been passed on this and changed on this, and the second there is an employee who says, hey, I would like to have one, then employees are subject to offer this. So it can be quite challenging for companies to know what to offer, and sometimes lots of expats that come to our table don't know what it is, if they're paying into it, and what does that mean for them. So fantastic that you're already profiting from this. Beyond this, do you have any other provisions for your future?
Does a state pension count?
It counts.
Okay, that's great. I am legally required to contribute to the German state pension. And since I've done that for 5 years, do I have 10 points or like 7.5 points?
It depends on how much you contributed.
Okay, I make 60,000 euros a year in this example. Do I hit the 2 points?
No.
No. Okay, what's the threshold to hit the 2 points?
If I recall correctly, you're in Berlin, right?
Yes.
Around 80K?
80K gets you the 2 points. And to explain the point system, as you continue your career here in Germany, you accumulate points up to 2 per year max, right?
Yeah.
And once you are of retirement age, those points dictate how much you get monthly and annually from the government until you die.
There are many different reasons why you get points. So some things get acknowledged later on. So if you worked in different countries in Europe, for example, really important to keep all paperwork so that you can prove it later on that you have access to this. Maternity leave sometimes, caring for elderly parents in some occasions. Is obviously part of the statutory system's job to check exactly what are you entitled to receive. However, this happens automatically. It's kind of like a stamp card when you get like coffee.
Oh yeah, and so like 10 lattes means you get one free.
Sort of,
yeah.
But in this case, it just means how much pension they're willing to, in the best case scenario, give you, pre-inflation and pre-taxes. So basically they are collecting points, they're collecting qualifiable assets that you can access in the future, given that obviously demographics in Germany, and this is why I want to go into this part.
What is that part?
Risk management. Do you have any existing insurances?
Should we put state pension here, or does that not belong there?
Pension is definitely one of the essential risks. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Confused about what to do with your money abroad? Well, I can help with that. My financial fluency course will give you the perfect overview of how taxes work, budgeting methods, investing options, and so much more. Check the description for details.
And so back here, what was this again?
These are the basic risks. So we're talking about like the points you get from the statutory system, right?
Yes.
So when we're talking about existential risks in Germany, this comes, if you looked at our previous video, you know that we pay Social Security, right? So in your case, Luz, you're paying into Social Security, you're paying taxes, and you're paying for healthcare.
I am, yes.
Nursing care.
Yes.
Unemployment.
Yes.
And pension.
Yes.
And on top of that, you have a bit of company pension.
Exactly.
This is, again, still not enough.
What? I'm having panics in Mexican. I feel like I've been doing everything that like people told me to do, and still it's not enough. That's worrying and surprising to hear.
But this is not enough even for born and raised Germans.
Oh, so we're all screwed.
And
Zusammen.
For expats in particular though, because we join the workforce later, we have more fragmentary pension, we earn higher rates of money because highly qualified labor usually, or self-employed people, also completely different needs, right? So the gap for expats is a lot higher, but the gap is there not only for pension, not only because you have less points of this to qualify for pension in the future, but also because, for example, in the healthcare area, there are needs. In the workforce area, there are needs. Liability insurance, the one that is independent from the statutory pension, and pension on itself. So these are the basic risks that a person should account for the gaps that the system leaves us with. This is the issue for insurances in Germany.
Should we put an exclamation point there? So we're actually recording this during Easter holiday. While everyone else is like sleeping, drinking, relaxing, we're here with you creating financial education content because this is just so important to us. And we also have these like fun teaching tools. So look out for that.
So the exclamation mark in red, we're gonna go for this for risks.
Risk, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then this is gonna symbolize risk. I'm gonna pass you on the emergency fund one.
Great. So an emergency fund is a amount of money that you have set aside for exactly that, an emergency. And typically I recommend that my clients budget 3 to 6 months worth of cash for an emergency fund, just in case they're laid off, in case a tree comes crashing through their home. Truly, no one knows what life might throw at them, and I would hate for you to get into expensive credit card debt to try to sustain that.
Additionally to this, depending on your particular life stage or short-term expenses, your need for an emergency fund can vary in your personal preferences, where you can need that to sleep at night or if it's just already enough.
Yeah.
Some people like to keep a little bit less or just above the threshold. That is definitely worth considering. One more question for Luz in this case. Do you have any of these additional insurances apart from the statutory and company pension? And healthcare, obviously.
I have the insurance that if I lose my keys, I won't be charged to rekey the entire home. This is a big deal in Germany.
This is most likely included in your private liability.
Great.
We're happy to check that if you want.
Okay.
Okay, then I've just asked you a bunch of questions. What are we going to do with this information?
Yes.
We've established that you have a monthly surplus.
Yes.
So we've established that you have goals that you want to achieve.
I do. A house and a family.
House and a family, which will mean in the short term, you said 2 years, 2 to 5 years.
Yes.
So this is in the short term, so we're going to need to prioritize liquidity in this area.
Okay, so what does liquidity mean?
Liquidity means that from your monthly surplus, so the difference between your all of sources of income, in your case your salary, and the expenses and liabilities that you have, so what you're paying to your federal loans versus as well to normal expenses like rent, food, going out, having fun, all of that, whatever is left, one part of that is going to definitely go into your liquidity goals.
Gotcha. So the liquidity is the money that you have left over after you've paid all of your necessary bills and savings goals.
Confused about what to do with your money abroad? Well, I can help with that. My financial fluency course will give you the perfect overview of how taxes work, budgeting methods, investing options, and so much more. Check the description for details.
I can put a green check on the emergency fund.
Yeah, we're doing well.
This is fantastic. And then we have also that we're accounted for. The annual expenses were already accounted onto this, and there was also an additional surplus for the goal of purchasing real estate. The one thing that we have is an open liability.
Okay, what is my liability?
Your student loans.
My toxic trait is my student loans aren't paid off yet, but it's for a particular reason.
And there's nothing wrong with having some open liabilities. It's just a matter of accounting for them and planning.
Exactly.
And now the question is, how are we going to allocate this? So we have the liquidity management is almost done.
Okay.
We have some, here Luz, you have some open liabilities, and you also have big expenses that you want to make into the future, which are not necessarily in assets.
Yep.
Which means in this case, higher need for liquidity. But we're definitely gonna need to tackle the risk management part of your cash flow.
Okay.
Which is going to lead to basically making sure that you can sustain your living standards in the future.
Gotcha.
As you said, you're okay with your 9 to 5.
Yes.
And you want to keep that at least the level of lifestyle that you have now. Over time, however, working in tech and as a young professional, obviously this is going to increase and change. Would you like the opportunity to optimize your taxes for this as well?
I would love that. Is that an option? Can I put my hand up?
It is an option, yeah.
I think this is something we also don't realize. We can drive our taxable income down by playing according to the government's rules. So in America, we have tax efficient accounts which lower our taxable income. And what options do we have here in Germany?
For investing, basically the principle is, Germany is a social state, right? So we were talking about, demographics in Germany, people growing older, less people being born and so on, and the system being heavily burdened. We also have issues with the lack of housing.
Yes, that's a huge one.
It's a big issue. So in this case, for example, if you provide housing, if you're have a property that you're renting out and providing housing, you get tax benefit.
Do you want to buy a house and house me?
That could be a very good business model. So basically, investing in a property to be rented out, ideally with a management strategy and so on, which we can advise on as well. This area is also through your pension planning. So when you're doing something for yourself, for the future, you pressure away from the system, and you are using those assets to create the future you imagine.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
And so they give you incentives to do that.
Yeah, there are incentives in place so that people really get a move on this topic. And what is there? Is there anything sexier than tax benefits in Germany? I don't
Absolutely not.
It's really, I mean, they did studies on that. It is slightly concerning. In that area, it's definitely possible for, you know, long-term investments to create a leverage on your taxes, and then also for your wealth building and other assets to optimize this. However, just because an asset is tax optimizing doesn't necessarily mean that it's what you want to do.
Fair. And before we carry on, I just want to point out here, there are different years for a mid-term wealth goal and a long-term wealth goal. So the long-term is plus 15 years.
Yeah.
And then mid-term is 6 to 15 years. And we already spoke about our goals for 0 to 5 years. So remember that this is a long game that we're planning for.
Yeah, we're definitely playing the long game. Investment and wealth building are the long game.
They are.
And the early bird gets the worm first in this. Like, the younger you are, the younger you start thinking about this, the better, the harder your money will be able to work for you.
Absolutely.
So when we come here to the midterm investments, important is also the diversification. And considering that you have the American citizenship and foreseeably want to have the double citizenship, in this case, we should consider as well the assets that are going to be beneficial for you. Even in that situation, there's plenty that you can choose from still, despite the limitations.
Great. So all hope is not lost, guys. Don't worry.
It is definitely possible. And then the last thing that we should look for as well is, you said that you and your life stages and duration of your stay, ideally you would like to stay in Germany for as long as possible.
Yes, please.
Which means a different side to the tax optimization is that when we look at your assets, we should look at the combination of your assets that is also going to optimize your taxes in the future, because surprise, in Germany you pay taxes during retirement as well.
Yeah, you might as well just pay taxes into the grave at this point.
It is kind of the idea of the reforms that they've been doing. So it's incredibly relevant that we think in the long term on a strategy that is going to bring you further, regardless how long you stay and what does that look like.
Great.
This would be a little bit of how I would approach it. What does this mean for Luz concretely?
What does it mean?
So this means for Luz concretely that we have lots of work to do.
Yeah, we do. She's complicated, but she deserves what she wants. She's a hard-working lady. So what's the next step then?
The next step would be, first of all, we need to determine what gaps does she have. How big are they? Because if we can quantify them, then we can plan for it, realistically.
Okay. How do we figure that out?
We need to take a look into, with what you've already been paying into the system and the other assets that you have, how much wealth, net wealth do you have to provide for yourself in the future?
Okay.
And prospectively, how realistic is it in what time frame to afford the type of house or property that you wish to acquire?
Yeah, that's a big one that is sometimes not always comfortable to speak with your clients on, because we have our own personal goals. I want a house in 2 years, blah, blah. But if the liquidity isn't matching up with the expectations of the bank for your deposit, for the additional cost with buying a house, for any potential taxes, like in the UK, we have the stamp tax. The timeline that I had in my mind as Luz doesn't always make sense. And that's okay. We're in a really complicated situation.
It is exactly like that, and it is incredibly relevant that we consider, first of all, again, financial planning is getting people from A to B in the most optimal way, right? So it's a process, and it's going to be a multiple year process.
Yep.
So next worst thing to no planning is planning without follow-up.
Yes.
So we're gonna have to take a look into this quite frequently. We're gonna tailor this as your life stages change. The priorities are going to shuffle. It's dynamic. Financial planning is always dynamic. So the first thing we're gonna do is first of all assess your gaps, assess your goals, and where are you now compared to that? Is this realistic, and through what financial instruments, meaning different things you can invest on or different things you can purchase for yourself that are going to take you further on this in the most optimized way? How do we get you there in the right period of time? And as soon as we're done with that, then we can start allocating the necessary monthly surplus. And first I would like to do a little bracket to summarize it, just because, let's say for example, Luz, you had here 15,000 euros left every month, for example.
15,000?
15,000.
Or 1,500.
15,000, or if you had 1,500.
Okay.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter, because what we're looking at is the constellation as a whole.
Okay.
So it doesn't really help me if someone has 1,500 left and they have excellent habits and no liabilities and they already have part of the gap covered and they have wealth. Completely different situation than perhaps someone with 15K but $500,000 in debt and no assets and in mid-50s. Completely different situation. So again, this is relative how much there is available, just because you might look at a lower sum at the bank account at the end of the day or a high sum you don't know what to do with. This is not an indicator directly of are you going to achieve your goals or not, without the context of how all of these fits together. This is really important.
Absolutely.
So if you had here, for example, the 1,500 in this case, just because we have a goal that says today you should start investing the 1,500 just directly into this. In financial planning, one of the golden rules is look at your goals first. So to do it holistically, we have to take into consideration that if you put everything on one bucket, what's going to happen with the other buckets? Are you going to achieve all your goals?
So you mean if I dump all of my cash and assets,
loans, for example,
into the immediate 0 to 5 year goal, I'm not filling up these other two buckets in preparation.
Precisely.
Okay, good thing to remember, because I think we as young people, because we're young people, we think the world's not going to exist in 6 to 15 years. So why not live large now in 0 to 5? So we just want to spread the risk in all of the decisions that we're making. And Martina, show us how.
Yes, and this is going to be according to your individual needs. So for example, depending on how big your pension gap is, how aggressive should we start on this?
Great point.
Cost phase of the different products of financial instruments that you end up taking. How do they combine with other assets? Is early retirement something you would like, or are you more okay now, just whatever it comes, it comes? These are all factors that play a role into deciding during what life stage do we shuffle and prioritize what. So the allocation of your resources isn't just as straightforward as, okay, I have 1,500 left and then it's just 1/3 into each. There's no magical formula for percentage here, percentage there. It's always related to your individual goals. And in this case, Luz wants to stay in Germany, but let's add the complexity of Luz moving somewhere else in perhaps 5 to 10 years, or not knowing when, but knowing that it will happen.
Yeah, that's a big expat problem. Where are we going to end up?
So then we need the most flexibility. So how do we distribute this in a way that the money is also easily available? And this is the challenge.
Yeah. Could we give one example for both? Because I know it changes based off of life stage and where I see myself going, but I think having one example for each might be a good idea.
Yes, absolutely. So for example, in the midterm investments, you have 3 categories of assets. Midterm investments, again, doesn't necessarily mean that it's something you invest. If you buy a house, for example, right? 6 to 15 years. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's 15-year midnight 00001. Okay, now you need to sell it because 15 years are over.
Yeah.
That's obviously not the case. So when you have different assets, clearly the wealth management, when we talk about creating wealth, we talk about the distribution of the combination of long and midterm assets. So one example of midterm assets could be property. Rental properties in this case. That's an asset, rental properties, bringing you money.
Shall I write that down?
Yes, we can do that. So I'm going to do black so it's legible.
Yep.
So one example could be rental properties. One very famous example that everyone is familiar with, and it's the first thing that pops into people's minds when they think financial advisor.
Rental units?
Rental units could also be within the rental properties.
Life insurance?
Life insurance is one thing. Insurance is also part of your wealth.
Stocks and bonds, brokerage?
Market investments. Yes.
Market investments, there you go. That was a hard game.
Market investments. So this is the traditional, if you think about financial advisor, the most common picture you probably have in your mind is someone trading on the market, like in a suit kind of.
That's exactly what we do now.
Behind the computers with the green lines.
Sell. Martina, if people want to work with you, where can they find out more information?
You can find more information at expats.com. And also follow us on Instagram if you feel like having the daily news on what we're up to and the information that we provide. We provide many of cost-free educational resources such as workshops, talks for companies as well if you feel like your colleagues should know about this. But if you have any personal questions, you can always reach out directly through Vanessa, through our handle, for our personal accounts. We are an ever-growing team of over 14 advisors Germany-wide at the moment, but over 1,500 other companies. So don't be shy, let us know.
Absolutely, and those details are going to be linked in the description, so check out more information there.
Thanks for watching. If you liked that video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel.